Hi everyone, welcome back to another Q&A Friday. Again, we're doing a pre-record. Apologies for the lack of live coverage. Hopefully soon we'll have some better internet and we'll be able to bring you something that you can interact with a bit more readily. I'm certainly looking forward to it. So today we've got some questions. The first one is, can I ride my horse in the heat? Now that's kind of relevant because we've had a heat wave in Australia this week, and I think it got up to 45 where I live, and it got up to 49 in some parts of South Australia. That was the forecast, and I'm certain that it got higher than that. So it's been an awful week here, and I'm sure many people and many horse owners are glad it's over. So can you ride your horse in the heat? Well, yes and no. So there are, and bear in mind that I'm not a vet, but for me, what works for me is that I check to see how cold it's been overnight. So if it's gotten below 20 overnight, and this is degrees Celsius too, that's kind of my limit. If it gets under that, everyone's going to have a comfortable night. The horses are probably going to be comfortable. I'm probably going to get plenty of sleep and not be a grumpy rider tomorrow. And it also means that the morning's probably going to be quite cool. So for me, it depends how low it gets. It doesn't really matter how high it gets, although most of the time, for me, if it's 41 and over, I won't even schedule a ride, and that just means I can organise my day differently and do different work rather than waiting to see how the morning pans out. So for me, 41 and over, I don't plan on riding, but if I needed to ride, I would see how cool the morning was and how long that lasted. And maybe, say I only needed to ride one horse if I was preparing for something, then if it was cool enough, I would ride that horse. And the other thing you can do is just ride for less. You don't need to ride for 45 minutes. Ride for 15 or 20. And that can be, sometimes, especially if you're breaking in a horse and you don't want to give it that particular day off if it's hot, just work them for a really short amount of time and aim for something that they've already done. So either repeat what you did yesterday or do half the amount of work that you normally do with them. And that's a really good way of staying in touch, not overdoing it for the young horse, the breaker, and not overdoing it for yourself either. Because don't forget, you absolutely don't want your horse to get hot when you work them if it's then going to be hot later in the day. You want to make sure their temperature comes back down, or that they actually don't get a raised temperature at all. So you want some very easy work, maybe even an easy trail ride or a hack out, maybe even some easy rails, on the arena. Something really low stress, low anxiety, no one gets upset, the horse or the rider, and that way you're setting yourself up to have something done but not overdoing it before the hot weather. And then of course, I would expect that you would use electrolytes with your horse or salt, and give them a really good hose off with cool water after you ride. And that way, you're doing everything you can to keep the horse comfortable, and the electrolytes of course will help the horse to keep drinking. And my horses get electrolytes even if they're not being worked. On hot days, like especially the over 40 days, they get salt or electrolytes, and that's just peace of mind for me to make sure they're still drinking. Now, question number 2, we're moving into the saddle now, and question number 2 is, how can I stop my hands bouncing? So lots of riders, and I see this all the time with students, and their hands start moving. They either, the hands move with the body, or the hands start lifting up, or one of them will come out or down. And as soon as the rider isn't thinking about what their hands are doing, the hands are off on a journey of their own. So one of the things you can think about is, when you've got your reins, think about your little finger brushing on the saddle cloth, or if you have that fluffy in front of the saddle cloth, or even if you don't, imagine you've got the fluffy, imagine your fingers are brushing on that, and you want your fingers to be down, you want your hands to be down low even when you're rising. So if you're rising up, you want to keep your hands down low. And sometimes what that means is that you're pushing your hands down as your body lifts. So you'll push your hands down as your body lifts, and then you'll relax them back as you sit down. And you'll repeat that over and over. But if you can keep a reference point for your hands, and if you've identified the hands as one of your particular challenges that you'd like to overcome, keep that on your checklist. As you ride, you're going through your checklist, how's my seat, my hands, my arms, my back, my legs, and so on. That checklist is going to look different for every rider. So, if hands are your issue, put them back at the top and keep your checklist short. If you've got 10 things on your checklist that you have to keep, tabs on, then by the time you get back round to the first one, you will have not been able to keep that in check. And if it's hands, they could be anywhere. So yeah, keep your checklist short, put hands at the top, and always keep coming back. Where are my hands? What are my hands doing? Can I feel the wall? Can I feel the saddle cloth? Can I feel the saddle? Keeping reference with the actual pommel can be a bit problematic because that's a little close to the body, and sometimes it'll look like your hands are jammed into your tummy or your crutch a little bit, and you don't really want that. But they do need to be very low. The other thing to do to keep tabs on it, or as a coach yourself tool, is that you can video yourself or get someone else to video you. There's always an opportunity for someone else, even if you're riding at home, you'll have a husband or a child or a neighbor or a friend handy, even if it's for a couple of minutes, it doesn't matter. In fact, shorter is better. We are our own worst critics, so you'll get a lot of information from a video, even if you've taken it on your phone for a couple of minutes. And that's all it takes for you to be able to say, okay, my hands need work, and there might be other things. So yeah, definitely videoing yourself, keeping a reference for your hands, and keep coming back to that reference quickly, without checking on too many other things as well. The other thing you can do with your hands is use a monkey grip. And you might not need a monkey grip for safety purposes, but if you have a monkey grip, it gives you a really good idea of where your hands are and how uncomfortable it feels, or how out of your comfort zone it feels to keep at least one of your hands in the correct position. Now, be careful about the monkey grips, because most of them on the market are really short, and the short ones are useless. So you need to get an extra long one, and you can find the extra long ones at the saddle makers or the saddlers who make their own. So get an extra long one, or get two and join them together. I've seen some really short ones on the market, and they are particularly useless. So if you have a very short, if you can only find a very short one, get 3 of them and link them all together, and then clip them onto your saddle. And what you do is you hold the monkey grip in your outside hand. So no matter what way you're going, always in the outside hand. And of course, if you do a transition, you swap over to the other outside hand. And that will give you a really good idea of how comfortable or uncomfortable you are with your hand, with your hands in the correct position. You are only testing one at a time with this technique, but it gives you a really good idea anyway. So how can I stop my hands bouncing? Hopefully some of those ideas will work for you. Okay, and last question for this week is, how many times a week should I be riding? And what if I can't do that many? Okay, and this is a really good question. People ask it all the time, and the answer is it really does depend. First of all, you have to do you. You can only do what you can, and you can only do what you can with what you've got. And if time is one of the things that's in short supply for you, then you really do have to do what you can with what you've got. So, in an ideal world, you would ride 5 times a week, maybe 6, and that way you will ensure that your horse gets fit, strong, stays supple, and doesn't injure itself out in the paddock or in work. So if you can't ride 5 or 6 times a week, probably, and then even then again, it depends. You know, if you've been at a high level and you can't ride that many times a week, your riding is still going to be very good, and you're still going to be able to achieve plenty if you can only ride 3 or 4 times a week. However, if you're a learner rider or a beginner or a novice, and your horse is the same, the less you can ride, it just means that you have to manage expectations. It might be better to not plan any great leaps in dressage training for the foreseeable future. Plan really small increments of achievement, really small, and then just, you know, do the best you can with what you've got. You know, I guess the problems start coming in if you've got a naughty horse or a young horse. You don't want the naughty horse to repeat the naughty behaviors every ride, and in order to get over that kind of thing, you need to ride more often. For me, you know, if I have a naughty horse, it gets ridden every day until the naughty behavior finishes, and if it's really naughty behavior, I'll ride it twice a day until that behavior has finished. And you know, it doesn't take long. They get the idea. If it took 2 days of riding twice a day, you know, it's usually finished by then. In a similar way, what you can do is do what you can with the time for most of the time, most of the year, most of the month, and then depending where you have, you know, pockets of time, that's when you take the opportunity and you ride a lot. You know, you might have holidays from work, or, you know, school holidays with the kids, or you know, if you're a shift worker, your shift cycle might change. Whatever it is, find the opportunities in your lifestyle where you can put blocks of days together, and in those blocks, well, that's when you can really push ahead. And for the rest of the time, while you can only ride, you know, whatever you can do, it might be best to manage your expectations and just say, all right, we're going to, maybe even a holding pattern is what will work for you. Or instead of working on progressing through the levels, you work on getting right, or work on making better what you can already do. And in that way, that's a really good way of building your confidence and the horse's confidence on 3 days a week. Yeah, so that's what I would advise. The other thing to think about is that you don't have to ride for 30 or 40 minutes each ride. If you've only got, you know, 20 minutes of riding time, 15 minutes of riding time, and if that means that you get an extra day of riding in, then that's fine. That's really good. Manage what you want to do in that time. You know, keep everything short and sweet. Don't do anything too full on if you've only got 15 or 20 minutes. But yeah, if you've got that window of opportunity, do it. And there are ways of managing your horse so that the whole process can take a very short amount of time. And, you know, if you want me to talk about that further, I can. But yeah, there are ways to squeeze more in. There are things that you don't need to do every time you bring your horse in, and, you know, find what they are for you. And if that gives you more riding time, then, you know, that's great, and that's what you want. If it comes to you not being able to ride as many times a week as you like, find other ways to make it work, either with the horse management side of things, or your session planning, and also managing your expectations. If you have all of those things in a nice balance, you will actually get a little bit more out of your riding than you expect. So yes, it's possible to keep the dressage horse going on 3 days a week. In an ideal world, yep, 5 or 6 days would be better, but not everybody's got that kind of time. I hope those have helped you with your dressage horse and time management. So I hope those questions have given you something to think about next time you're riding or planning your time with your horse. So thanks for joining us today, and we will be back again next week. If you've liked the video, click on the like button. If you have a question for next week, put it in the comments below, or any other comments or suggestions, you know what to do with them. I'll talk to you again next week, everyone.